What's up, everybody? My name is Bryce, aka DubsNotSubs, and in today's video we are going to be talking about Junji Ito's adaptation of Osamu Daisuke's No Longer Human. This was originally written by Osamu Daisuke, but without further ado, let's talk about that. So I plan to start a new series called Let's Talk About That, where basically we take an in-depth look into the manga or volumes that I think deserve a further look in, and it's not a review, it's more of a synopsis and just a discussion of what the volume is itself. And this volume specifically, we can be covering the 10 misfortunes in this, and again, I will be spoiling the entire book in these kind of discussions, so if you have not read it, be sure you don't care about spoilers, because the entire thing of Junji Ito's Osamu Daisuke Dazai, I don't know how to say Japanese names, anyway, will be spoiled, but we're going to be covering the 10 misfortunes in that, so let's get right into that right now. First off, I know this isn't a review, but I do want to say this is a very good book. There is a lot of stuff in this book that I don't agree with some of the stuff, because it is from the look of a person, it's an autobiography, which is Osamu Daisuke found the person who's originally in this book, who this book is about. He writes about him, so it's not about Osamu Daisuke as himself, which I thought it was. I thought it was like his own biography, but it's not. But it is a very dark book. There's rape, there is harm, there is drug abuse, there's suicide. This book is like everything bad with humanity, but I think it takes a interesting look at the worst parts of humanity and the worst parts of life, and even some of the things that seem positive in life and the negative side of that, because overall I do think that as a society, we tend to not look at the bad things in life. We just kind of ignore them, choose not look at them, just pretend they're not there. But this takes a very, very clear look at all the bad things in life and all the negative things that you can do. And ultimately, No Longer Human was a very solid read, even though I didn't I didn't agree with what a lot of his perspectives were in some of the situations, especially with women, and towards one of the misfortunes. I'll cover that more in depth. But overall, I think it's a fantastic book, worth a read if you're okay with darker content like this. I think there's a lot to be unpacked in this kind of volume. But yeah, overall, we're going to be going into the 10 misfortunes, like I said. So I have my iPad pulled up with all the pictures of it, and we're going to be starting with the first misfortune, which I will give a little recap of what happens. This is after he ends up doing a bunch of sleeping pills and overdosing, and then his final woman that he was with ends up committing, not ends up committing suicide, but goes into a burning building to try to save her handicapped dad, and ends up burning inside. So he ends up in a drug rehabilitation center, and he right now is going through a withdrawal. I believe that's what's happening right now. No, this has to be the withdrawal. Yeah, this is in the middle of the withdrawal. I remember this. Yeah, for some reason I thought it was something else. But anyway, let's get right into this. The first misfortune is society, and this is what he says society is. Let me see if it's not in the back. Okay, no, it's not. Okay. At most, society was the individual. It was not worth fearing. I believe this, but when a crowd of individuals form, the pressure increased tenfold, 100-fold. So, his first misfortune is this basically goes through all the stuff that he feels like in life brought him bad, obviously, his 10 misfortunes, but society is his first one, and the thing about society is the pressure that he sees by it, and the pressure to fit in and become someone that seems acceptable in society. And I think that's something that we all kind of deal with, for the most part. We all want to fit in with society to a certain extent. We may want to fit in with our group, with our friends, with people who are important to us, and overall, I do think there is to an extent, a problem with wanting to fit in, because at a certain point you are giving up parts of yourself to fit in, and if someone can't accept all of you, and again, I don't think there's really anything wrong with trying to fit into a crowd, because let's be honest, we're not perfect, any of us, in any capacity. We all need to change, and even if we feel at first that changing is bad, even if it's to fit in with a crowd, I do think there is some good with fitting in a crowd, because it allows you to be more friendly with them, allows you to get more connections between them. But I think there is a certain extent, which this one dives into, with the society himself. He tries to fit in, do anything he could to just be the person that people liked. And I'll get onto the respect, not respected though, I'll get onto that, because that is his second misfortune. But society itself is a very overwhelming creature, especially for people in power or celebrities or something. I feel like I don't know if that's in later, so I'll just cover it now. But anyway, celebrities or any popular culture, you see that all the time with these fans who always are watching over them, and the second they make any tiny mistake, it is like the end of the world to them, and they just freak out, and it's just this overwhelming hate, like they were betrayed. Like these people, if it happened to a normal person, wouldn't care, but since it's somebody they seem or deem worthy of almost a higher plane of existence, well, they put them on this pedestal that they're perfect, and then they find out, oh, they're just human like us. They kind of pitchforks, torches, and everything go like take them down because they put them on this unfair pedestal, which I really don't like the objectation of people, especially with celebrities. They kind of put them on another platform, and people that we like. I mean, we all idolize people, right? But there's always that phrase, you never want to meet your heroes. And I think that's a very important thing to remember, even if you respect someone, that they are still human, and that there are a lot of mistakes they can still make. And even though they may, depending on what the mistake is, like, I don't know, I can't speak for every celebrity, but like, you know what I mean. There's celebrities out there who does some really bad things, but to a certain extent, you have to remember that they're human too, and they're going to make mistakes. And even if they did those bad things, is what they're representing or what they're remembered for really that bad? It's almost like in the Rick and Morty episode when King Jellybean did his thing with children, and they find out about it, but they end up burning the photos at the end because they decide to remember who he was rather than what he was thought to be of, or like the idolship of him, rather than him being like this pedophile. It's just one of those things where even though he's a terrible person, does the thought or the concept of him being a good person outweigh the reality of the situation? Almost like just lying to save somebody outweigh the truth of telling them, or something like that. Anyway, we're going to get on to the second misfortune, which is being respected, and that is covered right here. And he says, the misfortune of being respected, nearly perfect. I fooled people, and then a certain all-knowing someone saw through me and smashed me to pieces. He shamed me in a way worse than death. This was the misfortune of being respected. He specifically quoted misfortune. Let me look this up in the book real quick because I don't want to misquote him, but I believe it's something, he says something along the lines of, it's like the perfect lie or something like that, and they almost put him up. And this is when I was going to talk about the celebrities, actually, but you already heard my whole spiel about it, so I won't get into that too deeply. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this respected phrase. I believe it was earlier in the volume. Here, let me see if I can actually find it. Alright, I found it. Okay, my definition of respected. My definition of a respected man was one who had succeeded almost completely in hoodwinking people, but who was finally seen through by some omnipotent person who ruined them and made him suffer shame worse than death. And to a certain extent, that's what I was going to say with celebrities, of being put on this pedestal of almost being able to do no wrong until they finally find out that they, in fact, can do wrong. And there's a lot more to people than just what meets the eye. I'm going to quote this, but the only reason I know about this is because I found it on iFunny, and it was a long time ago, but it was a Japanese proverb, and I don't know what the proverb is, but it's basically that everybody wears three faces. There's one they wear around in public, there's one that you wear with close friends and family, and then there's one you only see with yourself. And I do believe that's true. I believe that there are masks that we all wear to fit, like I said, society, fitting in. Then you have people close to you that you open up to a bit more. But there's always that third mask that is always only you know who you truly are. And to a certain extent, you could even fool yourself in who you truly are, because the mind's a tricky thing, and nothing in this world is set in stone. So anyway, without covering that too much, since I already went to the celebrity topic that I was going to go for, we're going to the third misfortune was friendship. And it goes, the third misfortune was friendship. We spent time together, holding the other in contempt, debasing each other. This was the shape of my friendships for me, symbolized by Horiki, which is his friend in the book. And then he goes into, this is what Horiki says, because I'm not really sure if I had too much to say on this, but I will. Hey, Lady Killer, I heard you're going to hell. Only natural, really, but congratulations. I'm a fortune? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. You brought countless misfortunes to those around you. Isn't trying to go to paradise asking for a bit much after all this? A fellow like you deserves to get his tongue pulled out by demons in hell, have his skin peeled off and be boiled like a broad bean. And then he goes to defend himself and denying what he did. But overall, I don't really know. I can't really say Friends of Misfortune. And even in this sense, he kind of messed with Horiki more than Horiki did to him. And I think the biggest thing of No Longer Human was, in reality, you're following the villain. Everything that happened in this book is a catalyst because of him. He causes a lot of this stuff, and he really almost seems like a bringer of death and misfortune to all those around him. Maybe because of all the stuff that he tries to fit in, which comes in later on with some of his other misfortunes. But yeah, I don't really have too much about the friendship part, because overall, I think friendship is a very powerful thing and overly positive. The only thing I can say is maybe your friends clouding your vision to be what you truly should be able to see. But here we go on to the fourth misfortune, which is the one about women, which I don't really understand for the most part, and I'll get into that. The fourth misfortune was women, human women, more than difficult. Wow, these irresponsible, insidious beings, the one who always drew near and looked after me for some reason. That is the fourth. Oh, did I miss the fifth? Maybe. Okay, I might have to look that up. I don't know why that's not in there, but anyway, moving on. The misfortune of women in this story was all his own fault. He always believed throughout this whole story that he had some kind of power that drew women to him, but in reality, all the stuff that happened bad to these women was because of him. Like, again, he is the catalyst to all their misfortune. If he never entered their life, overall, it would have been a lot better. Except for the first woman. The first girl is when he was a child and ends up getting, he gets raped by her. But overall, every other woman, it's pretty much because of him and what he does to them. But, yeah, I don't really have too much to say about that. Other than I don't really agree with that. It's like the one misfortune I don't understand. But then again, it takes him all the way till the final, like, one of the final chapters to finally admit that all this doing is his own fault. This whole time, he ends up spending the whole time just denying who did it. And while I'm talking about this, I'm trying to also find the fifth misfortune since I missed it. But anyway, he's the one who does this. It's his fault that they ended up like this for the most part. For like the two sisters at the beginning, which are his distant cousins, it's back in the old times. It's okay. But he ends up basically, where is it? He ends up basically cheating on both of them. He ends up having sex with both of them, and they both get pregnant. And so in retaliation, again, the girl decides to do this, but she also if he never cheated on the first woman in the first place, he wouldn't have had to deal with that. But overall, man, because the sister ends up actually murdering the other sister, like stabbing her in the stomach and killing her baby. It was really messed up. And then killing the sister. But yeah, it was a bit crazy. But then again, if he never cheated on her, like I said, and you can also say, if she didn't make the choice of going psycho and killing her sister, it was, yeah. And she ends up playing a bigger role, actually, in the end of the story. And I actually found where the misfortunes are, but I don't know where the fifth one is. Seventh? Where are you? Okay, 6. Where's the 5th? I didn't feel like it was that hard to find, but now I don't know how I missed this. It would have been so easier if I actually came prepared. I think the fifth misfortune is just his hometown, because it doesn't really say specifically fifth misfortune. It just kind of says he enters his hometown and then just skips to his next misfortune. Then, but yeah, hometowns. Depends on where you grow up and how you feel about your hometown and what really goes on around in your hometown. It's a very situational thing into what you feel like, whether hometowns are good or bad. They can be very suffocating at times and make you feel very trapped. But overall, this dude grew up in a rich household and stuff. It's weird to say that his hometown was a misfortune in and of itself, but I don't really know. But anyway, we have the sixth misfortune, which was the sixth misfortune was my siblings and servants. And he says, basically, it is all the pressure that the family gives him about him ruining the family. This is specifically maybe a lot more in Japanese culture than American culture. Of course, there's a lot of parents who are very oppressive in American culture, but I think overall this is definitely a more Japanese specific thing, especially with tradition and continuing your family line. There's a lot more that goes in depth on the Japanese tradition and how important that actually is for families, that he kind of feels like he's worth nothing when the family blames him for his family being for the name being ruined, for all the stuff that happens. Again, he causes a lot of the own misfortune himself, but at the same time, when your family kind of gives up to you, especially in Japan, it is a huge, just like almost the biggest shame you could have is having your family disown you. But anyway, we have the seventh misfortune, which was the misfortune of clowning. And this is like the big one for me that kind of sets up the rest of his life. And this is, the seventh misfortune was clowning, the forced smile of my young self. This itself was the accommodation I offered at the cost of excruciating efforts within. He basically it's about clowning and trying, again, with society. He does this to try to fit in because, as it says in the beginning of the first chapter, that he is afraid of human beings. In just a general sense, he's scared of humans. So he does this to try to fit in, to escape the scorn, to escape being looked down upon, or like in any negative way. He just does it to try to seem normal to the sense, and just make everyone happy with him. And this kind of spans the rest of his life. It, like, when he used to mess around at the table, like dancing around and all this stuff, he ends up actually doing this the rest of his life, and it kind of shapes how he just does whatever he wants, or will do whatever it takes for himself and his own personal gain, selling out people, throwing people under the bus. Like in one scene with another one of the women that he has fallen in love with him, he ends up joining a communist cult, and there's a stage where he ends up somehow becoming like the leader of this raid they're gonna do, or kind of just wreck at the streets, cause a riot. And when the cops show up, he ends up kicking the girl's, like legitimately kicking the girl's face, and just pushing her under the butt into the crowd with police, and just running away. Alright, hopefully the tilt's gone now. I didn't even notice. I was looking at the bubble at the front of my thing. I was like, uh-oh, it's pretty tilted. So hopefully it wasn't too noticeable, and if it was, I fixed it in post anyway. But what I was saying about clowning, and when he sells out that girl, just basically goes back to his clowning of just trying to please anybody and just be in everyone's goodwill, but ultimately he's only doing it for himself. This all relates back to him trying to just basically do whatever he can to survive and do the best he can in his own life, regardless of what happens to everybody else. And then the eighth misfortune, I believe, is the disappearance of his mother. And a mysterious old mark hidden beneath... Okay, no. Just the misfortune of his mother. The other part was something else. Here we go. My connection with her was weak. I had almost no memories of her. Mother, perhaps if I had truly known you, I wouldn't have turned into a human being like this. The misfortune of my mother disappeared, and a mysterious old mark hidden beneath it became vivid. Oh, okay. Basically, this is about how he... Okay, let me get back to where I was. But anyway, this is about his mother who disappeared when he was younger. He didn't really have a mother until, when he says of disappearing, a hidden mark became visible, was when a mother figure who was a maid in the house kind of took that place for her. And it kind of goes back to how he idolized her, always hung out with that girl. I don't remember her name, but basically he hung out with her, and that was his mother for the most part. And I don't think he called her mom, but it was his mom for whatever reason. But he basically idolized her, and then she left at like a younger age, and I believe that's when he started to change. And I do think the importance of a mother and father family is very important for a child, because I don't know, from a lot of facts I've heard, a missing parent in either sense, a father or a mother, really increases like crime rates, all these other things. Just broken families overall cause the increase of increases a lot of crimes. Just overall, I think poverty also increases if I don't know. Don't quote me. I'm not a politician. But anyway, I do believe in the fact that a mother and father, maybe just because I grew up with one, I do see the importance of having both kind of sides of it. And overall, I do think that missing a mother figure is a detriment on a child, and definitely I can see how this shaped him into becoming a different person, almost like wanting to please everybody without that caring mother who could almost take that place of having everybody else believe in you. Because when you have a mom who believes in you no matter what you do, or loves you forever to you, or whoever you have that is kind of takes that place of, as long as you have their opinion and they're on your side, nothing really matters. It doesn't have to be a mom. It can be whoever you trust the most and whoever trusts you the most. You know what I mean. If you have that person in your life, it doesn't really matter what other people says. Like society, you don't really care to a certain extent what society thinks of you, because as long as you have that person in your life, who cares what they think, as long as they're on your side. You don't care about the pressure. You don't care about having a clown. You don't care about all these other misfortunes, women, anything. As long as she's on your side. And with that missing piece, you almost have a hole. And I can see how that can lead to him wanting to start this clowning and almost this cry for attention with that missing person who could give him that attention. But anyway, moving on. Well, that was the 9th one, apparently. Anyway, we had the 10th misfortune, which was the 9th misfortune. Oh, does it go back? It's weird, because I think the 9th misfortune is his father himself. But anyway, his 10th misfortune was that he was obviously born, because the source of all my pain was that alone. But his 9th misfortune was his father, which is a very big role in this. And again, a father figure is very important to a person, especially an impressionable kid, wanting to have that, or whoever took that place of a father figure. And here we go, and this is the part I really want to get into, when he finally admits what he's done and why he did this. And this is when he is in the hospital going through a withdrawal, specifically with he did a bunch of drugs and got addicted to them, and like I said, he got stayed into a rehab clinic. So where is the part where it happens? He starts screaming. He flee. Okay, where is the part where it actually starts? Okay, I fled to the hallway. He sees an impression of himself, or maybe almost a double image of himself, and ends up fleeing out of his room and into the hallway, and he goes, "I fled desperately. The corridor was long, so long I felt as though it went on without an end." And he started screaming, Yozu, which was the last girl I believe that he was in a relationship with. And then Oba. And this is the friend who discovered that he was clowning on purpose, which was, like I said, when he says being respected, when he says somebody found out about him, this kid found out about him, and he ends up trying to please him in every way possible. So eventually he tells him that his cousin, who actually had a crush on Oba himself, ends up telling him that she liked him. And when he finds out that he doesn't, he ends up going and committing suicide, and he calls that kid a suicide. And instead of feeling regret for his decision, he ends up relieved knowing that nobody knows his true secret about his clowning. But anyway, he says, "Oba, on purpose. You did it on purpose." And then he goes to scream, and now he's screaming, and now he's hiding. I'm like the perfect audible reader. And then he starts saying, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." And then the image of himself pops up behind him. "What are you?" I'm a clown. A clown. I've lived a life of lies. Mine has been a life full of lies. I played the clown all the time. It was to deceive others. As a result, I brought unfathomable misfortune to those around me. My lies drove my classmate Takashi to suicide. I destroyed my relatives, those sisters. The older killed by the younger, and I created an accursed child with the younger. I planned a suicide with an unfortunate cafe waitress, and I left her alone to die. Deceived the innocent tobacco shop girl, who knew no doubt, and turned her into a paranoid wreck, jumping at shadows, pushing her into death and madness. And the woman at the pharmacy, she was utterly blameless. I turned her into a pitch-black corpse. They're all victims of my own clowning. I cannot be forgiven of this. And basically, it takes him all the way until this to finally, he probably knew, but to be able to admit what he did was a very big step for him, because before he always denied it. He always just kind of, maybe not so much blamed it on somebody else, but kind of just blamed it on everybody else, and just pushed the blame to whoever it was. But then you find out that the next morning that the person who was over top of him he was envisioning excuse me, he was envisioning a vision of himself, but it was actually Osamu Dazai who heard him and all his confessions, and then he ends up writing a book about him, and then the story ends up progressing on, and I will not spoil the exact thing so you have something to say, but man, the ending almost feels like he got what he deserves with all the misfortune that he's caused at all these people. But overall, I think this is a great book, and I think there's a lot of food for thought in here, and it does take a look on society in a way that we tend to ignore, which is the negative side of society, because it's a lot easier to push off the things that you don't want to know about. And overall, I do think this is a fantastic series. Give it a chance if you want to dive into something that is a lot more thoughtful, a lot of care goes into what everything happens. And again, I don't know how much of this is true, because again, when Osamu Dazai meets him, it's about when he's going through a drug withdrawal. So how much of that was over-exaggerated? How much did he imagine? It's hard for me to believe all this stuff happened to one person, but again, I wasn't there, so I can't say whether it's right or wrong. According to science, you need observation, and I don't have that. But I will choose to believe him, but I will say this definitely has to be exaggerated in certain parts, because there's too much stuff that goes on. Occam's razor, simplest solution is most likely the outcome. And a lot of this stuff is too crazy to seem be real, so it might be too real. But overall, I think this is a fantastic series. What do you guys think about this in the comments? And if you guys see more stuff like this, please tell me in the comments below what series you want to see, what you want to read, what you want me to read. And overall, guys, thank you just so much for watching, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I will see you in another video.